That's it for us. Thanks for watching.
Our news continues now with Steve Murphy.
All right, thank you, Bruce and Star. And now for this Tuesday, December 14th, live and local, this is CTV News at 6. Tonight, the sound and fury. High winds hammer the Annapolis Valley.
It doesn't even compare. I mean, the hurricanes that we've had and everything that, no.
Flash floods, heavy rains turn roads to rivers.
You just have to stand back here and watch her disappear. That's the hardest part of it.
Grounded, long lines and long waits at the airports.
Yesterday and this morning as well, significant amount of delays and cancellations.
Wider to the west, heavy snow buries Ontario.
We don't need a winter parking ban until it starts to snow.
Live from our Maritime News Center, this is CTV News. Here is Steve Murphy.
It is a storm that seems somehow out of season, uprooting hundreds of trees and smashing buildings, like something you'd expect after a hurricane of early summer or fall. And at the same time, unleashing the deep and fast-flowing waters of a spring flood. But this is not the stuff of melting snow and ice. Good evening, everyone. It is one massive December storm, but with two distinctive personalities. To the west of the storm, communities like St. Stephen and York Mills, New Brunswick, have been flooded in soaking rains. Flooding is also imminent in Fredericton. But to the east of the storm, hurricane-force winds have flattened buildings and trees in places like Berwick, Nova Scotia. Thousands of people in Nova Scotia are without power tonight. We begin our team coverage with CTV's Kayla Hounsell.
Chimney, the roof, electrical panel.
All because 4 trees crashed right through his roof last night. Wayne Murray says it's the worst damage he's ever seen, and he would know.
I was in the insurance business for 40-some years, and I've seen a lot of damage, and I've been involved in a lot of claims, but I've never seen, winds that strong.
It doesn't even compare. I mean, the hurricanes that we've had and everything that, no.
Look at how these trees fell near Holly Kaiser's house, just missing it on both sides. She was at a friend's house when it happened.
And I mentioned that the wind makes me nervous, and she said a little prayer, and I really believe that that's what saved us last night.
This campground wasn't so lucky. It's a 22-acre church camp with 105 cottages. More than half are destroyed. The co-chair of the camp's grounds says he estimates there are hundreds of trees down. The RCMP are now on site as well to make sure no one comes into the camp because there are still more trees teetering. Those who work here say 24 hours ago you couldn't see the sky through here. All of those trees now down. The damage is scattered throughout the community. This church lost its steeple. The entire town without power, some for 24 hours now.
Down trees or trees on automobiles, local flooding, wires down, people stuck on the road.
The town hall set up a comfort center for those unable to go home. Declan and his dad were evacuated after 9 trees knocked power lines down.
If the power were to, come back on, those lines would be live, and there could be power arcing anywhere going into the ground.
First of all, it was scary, and then today morning, I actually noticed how awesome it looked for a picture.
A light, if there's any in this mess. Kayla Hounsell, CTV News, Berwick, Nova Scotia.
Another of the buildings damaged in Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley is a seniors' home in the town of Windsor, and that is where we find CTV's Kellen Sundahl live tonight. So that is quite a scene behind you, Kellen.
Yes, it is, Steve. The winds were fierce and the damage is extensive. I'll just move out of the way and you can see this is the spot where an indoor pool used to stand at a seniors complex. Now everyone made it out safely, but it's scenes like this that are unfolding right across the valley.
It's probably the worst I've ever seen it.
The winds were strong enough to topple trees, rip roofs off homes, and snap power poles in half.
I walked up the road there and it was just wind just blowing everywhere. Almost picked me up off the road.
All night long, powerful winds and rain pounded Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley. The results were devastating and far-reaching.
It was just howling. Like, we've lived here for 23, 24 years.
Never seen anything like it. We've talked to a lot of the neighbors and who've owned farms, their grandparents, never seen winds like that before.
In this New Minas trailer park, dozens of trees uprooted. They fell on homes, lawns, and roads.
In the past 3 or 4 years, we had 4 trees cut down that we got Killam Properties to cut them down. They took care of those, but there's a lot more that need to be taken down.
Fortunately, no one was hurt.
They're over to the far end of the trailer is missing.
Kevin Swinimer lost his roof during the night.
And I came out and I seen a piece of the roof of this side of the trailer going down the road.
In Windsor, at the seniors complex, rubble marks the spot where an indoor swimming pool used to stand.
It was almost like thunder when it dropped. It just one big boom.
The wind blew in a window and the rest of the building followed.
Then I started getting quite concerned because I realized if the rest of that wall gave way, our pool was basically going to cave in. And within 5 minutes of that, the other part of the wall did let go.
Minutes later, the roof collapsed.
As you can see, we have a propane tank right here behind the pool. And my line was connected to that wall, which is now disintegrated. And I knew that if that propane line ruptured, we would be in deep trouble.
13 residents were forced to a nearby community center.
Come on, darling.
This is where Doreen McEwen and her cat have been staying.
We didn't get in bed probably till after 3:30, and nobody slept.
It was a rough night on the roads as well. Transport trucks lay flipped on their sides like toys. At the storm's peak, 93,000 homes were without power. Many remain in the dark. Schools and universities shut down. In Kentville, the roof of this funeral home now sits in pieces.
The funeral home is catastrophic damage. The roof's gone and it's major damage.
2 people inside got out safely, but the rain rushed in.
Ceilings down, walls peeling away. You're talking a building that is, quite old and had many renovations, and plaster has come down, and layers of flooring that's let go. It's a mess inside.
And now damage assessments are being done. Homeowners are left to clean up. There's roofs to repair, shingles to replace, and gaping holes to mend.
If you're not experienced with trees and power saws, leave it to the experts.
With this amount of devastation, that's a job that will likely take weeks. So right now the focus is on cleanup. And as you can imagine, there's quite a bit to be done, but already people were out today doing just that. It was quite a nice day out here today, sunny, no wind at all, so many people were out assessing their properties. And if you are going to get an assessment done from an insurance broker, well, there's going to be quite a lineup, as there's many people trying to do just that. And as well, the advice is if you are going to clean up, make sure you do it safely.
All right, Kellen, thanks very much. CTV's Kellen Sundahl in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. That's the windy side of this. On the rainy side, people who lived their entire lives in Little York Mills, New Brunswick, say there's now water where they've never seen water before. Heavy rains and flash flooding have washed away bridges and roads. Some people were forced out of their homes as the floodwaters moved in. CTV's Jonathan McGinnis with that.
Now you can see what we've got is no roadbed, we got a river.
John Thompson helplessly watches the raging waters around the Briggs and Little Woolen Mill.
Can't do anything. Mother Nature's doing its thing, and you just got to stand back and be safe.
Water breached this nearby dam yesterday afternoon, washing out this bridge and sending floodwaters over the road in front of the mill.
At 3 o'clock, which was only a 2-hour span, the water started coming across the road. We evacuated the mill, sent the employees home, cleaned out the parking lots as much as we could, and by 5 o'clock there was a foot of water going over the road.
Around back, sediment left by the torrent buried a Corvette Thompson was restoring. A couple of kilometers away, parts of Route 3 are water. The longest stretch, 1.5 kilometers long. Fire crews used boats to rescue people from their homes in Brockway after they became surrounded by water.
Early this morning we had to evacuate approximately 10 residents in the Brockway area. Water was flooding. It was up on their floors of the houses. We have about 5 to 6 feet of water over the road down here.
The heavy rain caused raging currents that knocked out bridges and roads all around York Mills and Harvey, cutting people off from places like St. Stephen and St. Andrews. But for others it's even worse. The only road leading from this house behind me is gone.
I've never seen anything like it.
ever in my life, and I've lived here all my life. I've never seen the main road ever closed.
Many residents have come out to see the damage for themselves. However, Harvey Fire Chief Jared Swan is asking people to stay off the roads for their own safety.
The roads are dangerous, a lot of washouts in the Harvey area, just lane and a half traffic. The no shoulders are gone, they're about 10 feet deep.
Officials say it will be weeks before the full extent of the flood damage will be realized. Jonathan McGinnis, CTV News, York Mills, New Brunswick.
Of course, people who live along rivers are accustomed to flooding, but it's usually something that happens in the late spring, not the late fall. These heavy rains have emergency officials keeping a wary eye on river levels on the St. John River. Carl Wilmot is with New Brunswick's EMO, and he's joining us now live tonight from Fredericton. Carl, we've seen the situation up in York Mills. It's dramatic there. They say it's the worst they've seen in many, many years. Is this as bad as it's going to get?
Well, for this event, we're certainly hoping that's the case, Steve. The weather coming in for the next couple of days bodes well for us. They're announcing some light rain, but nothing like we had in the last 24 to 48 hours for sure.
Now, what are you expecting downriver in Fredericton, Majorville, Shepherd Mills, places that often flood in the springtime?
Well, the situation here at Fredericton is we're at approximately 7 meters of level here now in Fredericton. The flood level for the first gauging of it here in Fredericton is 6.5 meters, so we've exceeded that by 0.5, and we expect by tomorrow morning at approximately 7 o'clock that we're going to be up to about 7.6 meters here in Fredericton. Downriver, it's going to take a bit of time for the water to transit down there, and the levels are coming up, and we're looking at for Gemseg tomorrow. For Majorville tomorrow, we're looking at 6 meters, which is right at their flood level, and in Gemseg 4.3, which is again right at theirs.
Now, in practical terms, what kind of flooding is that likely to mean right in downtown Fredericton, around the Legislature Centennial Building, the Beaverbrook Hotel, and so on?
Well, the situation downtown is that it's going to start impacting on the lowest of municipal infrastructure and buildings down here. For instance, I had a call just before I came over from the Crown Plaza, and they're in the process of doing what they have to do to mitigate their situation by sandbagging, which is something they always do. But we've got walking paths underwater and stuff.
You've been at this a long time, Carl. How unusual is it to see this sort of flooding at this time of year?
Well, as you say, I've been here for 6 years now. I've done the coordination for 4. I've never seen it like this before. This is something that is unusual. I couldn't classify it in terms of how unusual it would be, but certainly not in my recollection since I've been here.
Well, Carl, we certainly appreciate your time tonight. We wish you well as you cope with it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Carl Wilmot with New Brunswick's Emergency Measures Organization in Fredericton tonight. Off to the southwest, the cleanup is already underway after heavy rain washed out roads and caused widespread flooding. One of the communities very hard hit yesterday, the town of St. Stephen. Officials declared a state of emergency there overnight. CTV's Mike Cameron live in St. Stephen with the very latest on the cleanup for us. Mike?
Well, Steve, fortunately, most of the floodwaters have receded around the town of St. Stephen. The water seems to have gone down almost as fast as it went up overnight, and it came up fast, very significantly. Within a few hours, it caused significant damage around many parts of town. Today was more of a day to assess that damage and to get the cleanup started.
The power is out at the St. Stephen Dollarama. The store still has water on the floor, and a line indicating how high the water reached.
It's almost at 2 feet.
Adam McFarland says employees tried to keep the water from coming in without success.
Like I tried, we made barricades out back and tried to hold the water. We blocked this door up here, tried to hold the water out, but that didn't work. We didn't expect how much we're going to get. We're hoping just for a little bit.
The water has receded from around this mall. Yesterday, this area became one huge lake, encompassing the mall, an Irving gas station across the street, and a traffic circle at the entrance to town.
On King Street, we had a significant amount of flooding. Water levels rose as high as 8 feet, and it covered probably about 15 to 20 acres of land.
Longtime residents say they can't remember the last time this area was hit by such a deluge.
I've talked to other people around this area, and they said that they've never seen anything like this in the 50 years they were around here.
Last night, as a precaution, town officials took the unusual step of declaring an emergency.
High probability of increased flooding and further damage, so we erred on the side of caution and we declared a local state of emergency.
Today, town employees started the job of repairing road washouts, including a washout that got uncomfortably close to Al Falloon's house.
Just as there was trickle coming off the street, and then all of a sudden, just bang, everything started to go.
And not only roads, this railroad track hangs in midair. The culvert beneath was submerged by floodwater.
This is normally a tranquil little stream. Emergency officials in New Brunswick are warning people who live or work near rivers and streams to be aware of the potential for fast rising water over the next day or so.
Individual homeowners had water rushing through their yards, leaving deep scars in the ground carved by the torrents. The job of patching roads and assessing the structural integrity of roads and bridges that were water covered will go on for days.
Lots of people talking today about the thunderstorms that moved through this area last night, moved through all of southern New Brunswick last night, and how hard it rained during those thunderstorms. A little bit unusual, to say the least, to get thunderstorms in the middle of December. This area, Steve, also had a fair amount of snow on the ground before the rain. That, of course, combined with the runoff, and that, of course, contributed to the flooding situation overnight. Looking behind me, I don't know if you can see the St. Croix River in behind me there this evening. It is running very high and very fast right now. Now, granted, that's tidal water as well, but I think we're also seeing a fair amount of flood water there tonight, Steve.
I think you're probably right, Mike. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
CTV's Mike Cameron live tonight in St. Stephen, New Brunswick. The storm is not actually over. The worst is probably yet to come in Cape Breton. It could be this time tomorrow evening before the high winds and the heavy rains have come to an end on the island. Let's go now live to CTV's Randy McDonald in Sydney. Randy?
Steve, the numbers say it all. Winds of up to 80 kilometers this evening, some gusts in some areas of Cape Breton, 120 kilometers an hour, and plenty more rain, as much as 100 millimeters on top of the 30 to 40 millimeters we've already received. Here's a look at the local impact of the storm so far. The winds are creating chaos for Marine Atlantic. The North Sydney terminal is so packed with 18-wheelers, all trucks are now being turned away. And the backlog will get worse. Ferries could be stuck on both sides of the Cabot Strait until late tomorrow or Thursday. Trees were snapped by the wind. One big one split on a street in North Sydney. No one was hurt, but traffic was disrupted. Utility lines are also bearing the brunt of the wind. Power outages canceled classes at several Cape Breton schools. Thousands of homeowners awoke to the same problem. Rural areas are hardest hit. Some power customers won't have service restored until noon tomorrow. Anyone living in flood-prone areas should brace for the worst. As much as 100 additional millimeters are expected overnight. The only good news about the bad weather, the temperatures are well above freezing, leaving us weary from the wind, wet from the rain, but without a single snowflake to shovel.
All right, Randy, thanks very much. CTV's Randy McDonald with us tonight in Sydney. Meteorologist Tina Simpkin is tracking the storm as it continues to move eastward. There's more rain coming in for mainland Nova Scotia tonight as well. Tina, what's the latest?
Well, the latest is we're still tracking that area of low pressure down to our south, not to mention the area of low pressure that brought all the wind, the rain last night and into this morning. So it's an additional area of low pressure that's coming in for tonight. Take a look at Storm Tracker, and this is the remnants of what we saw this afternoon. However, coming up from the south, more rain is pushing in from another developing area of low pressure that's going to bring, on average for Nova Scotia, anywhere from about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. However, the further east we are, like portions from Guysborough County on eastward, we are expecting 30 to 40 millimeters tonight, an additional 40 to 50 millimeters tomorrow. In some areas, within the next 24 hours, we could receive about 100 millimeters of rain. Speaking of rain and wind, we saw high winds overnight last night into today. Check out some of the rain and the wind totals. In Greenwood, we saw wind gusts up to 111 kilometers per hour. And speaking of all the rainfall totals, especially in parts of southwestern New Brunswick, St. Stephen received over 174 millimeters of rain. Grand Manan, 124. Less rain totals the further east we were in the Maritimes, but tomorrow is going to be a different scenario. Once again, the further east we are, the more rain we are going to be expecting tonight. Rainfall warnings are already issued. We'll talk about the rainfall warnings and when the system is going to leave us alone coming up a little bit later in the newscast. Steve.
All right, we'll talk in a few minutes, Tina. Thank you. Meteorologist Tina Simpkin. Tonight over in Ontario, it is the snow that's causing the trouble. About 300 people near Sarnia were stranded in their vehicles overnight by snow and blowing snow. The military has now rescued about half of them, but as we hear from CTV's John Venevali-Rao, it was a frigid ordeal.
The rescue effort continued throughout the day. This, the dramatic scene on the highway near Sarnia, as police using snowmobiles tried to check on motorists marooned since Monday.
It's a storm that we generally don't get, and it's just blowing and it keeps on snowing, so got no visibility hardly.
Huge snowdrifts helping to shut down a 30-kilometer stretch of road. One truck driver stuck for 30 hours posting this YouTube video showing all the others whose travel plans were frozen too, left to survive a night they'll never forget.
The snow squalls were so terrible you couldn't see anything, and then you were wondering, what was going to happen next.
I've lived here for 35 years and I've never seen it like this.
The storm so bad again today at time plows were being pulled off the roads while police desperately tried to reach those still stuck, riding low on gas and some in need of medicine. School buses were used to try and ferry people out, along with military helicopters, though some refused to go.
It's an ongoing situation. Some people would prefer to, in some cases, wait out the storm and be able to roll on their own with their own vehicles.
Some taking advantage of warming centers set up by the police. At the Countryside Motel in Strathroy, we found this couple who'd been on their way to Sarnia when the storm forced them to spend the night and wait for better weather.
It's definitely an inconvenience. We'd rather be at home than here, stuck, so I don't like sitting doing nothing.
Some wondering if they'll have to wait until Wednesday to get out. And some of the stranded are complaining it took police far too long to reach them, saying in Canada, snow never should have left so many stuck for so long. John Venevali-Rao, CTV News, Strathroy, Ontario.
And we have a great deal more for you here after 6:30 tonight. We'll return to St. Stephen to update the cleanup from the flooding. Nova Scotia's Minister of Emergency Measures is also here to talk about the damage in the Annapolis Valley. Coming next, though, storm stage travelers. We've got tales from the airport as the news hour continues here on CTV, your home for news. $16 points to 13,280, and the Venture Exchange lost 13 to 2118. In New York, the Dow was up just shy of 48 points to 11,476. NASDAQ today up almost 3, 2627 at the close. The Nikkei gained almost 23 points, and London was up by 30 and change. The currency up 11/100s, closing today at 99.35 U.S. Bullion off 70 cents, $13.9730 an ounce, and oil dropped 29 cents to $88.32 U.S. Bombardier led the active issues. The Maritime interest stocks are next. Well, as you've seen here, strong winds and rain in the Maritimes, snow in Ontario, the perfect combination for major travel and delivery problems. As CTV's Paul Hollingsworth has found today, things are beginning to return to normal, but for many travelers, this has been a far less than pleasant overnight experience.
This children's choir was the only true example of harmony we could find today at Halifax Stanfield International Airport.
It's just a real mess, yeah.
So says Wayne Connolly. Sunday morning, he departed from Saskatoon. 30 hours later, exhausted and furious, Connolly touched down in his home province.
We were an hour late leaving Saskatoon, then we were an hour late getting into Toronto. We got to Toronto, everything was canceled, so they said they put us in a motel.
But the motel was filled with stranded travelers, and nearby hotels were too expensive. So Connolly returned to Pearson Airport in Toronto and waited.
Slept on the floor, and this morning, finally got on a plane. It's late leaving again, and it's late getting in again. It's just terrible.
Not an isolated incident. Sunday afternoon, Candy McDonald arrived from New Glasgow to pick up her husband, traveling from Calgary. 24 hours later, still waiting.
They're 1,200 feet away from landing, and they rerouted and went back to Montreal, and now they're in Toronto.
Such delays during the late fall and winter seasons are not uncommon. After a turbulent 2 days, the airport seems to have weathered the storms impacting the Maritimes and Ontario.
Yesterday and this morning as well, a significant amount of delays and cancellations. So now we're just getting into where we're catching up. We have aircraft starting to take off and land again today, and the folks who were delayed now are getting back out.
The airport authority now says it may take another day or two, but everything should soon be back on track, barring another major storm. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News.
But as we've said, a winter parking ban doesn't mean winter weather. Meteorologist Tina Simpkin is here with the latest on the storm as CTV News at 6 continues. Meteorologist Tina Simpkin is here with a look at the weather forecast. Certainly the rain has done a good deal of damage. The wind has been very destructive. Can you imagine if we had sub-zero temperatures, the blizzard that we would have been coping with?
Especially in a lot of areas. Consider this. It's usually about an 8-to-1 ratio, but on average between rain and snow. So
Right.
say if we had 10-to-1 ratio, so in those areas where we received almost 200 millimeters of rain, that would have been a lot of
Would have been a lot of snow.
There would have been a lot of shoveling. But yes, to say the least, the wind and the rain certainly caused a lot of damage across the Maritime provinces. And we're tracking the same area of low pressure. It's moving eastward slowly, but it is. Take a look at Storm Tracker and we'll show you what we're talking about. Most of the heaviest amounts of rain have now ended. That's the good news. The bad news is that there's another area of low pressure just off to our south and just off to the west that will be traveling off towards the northeast as we go through the overnight and into the early morning hours tomorrow morning. That's going to bring more widespread rain across the Maritimes, especially the further east we are. So those under the gun tonight are, say, from Guysborough County on eastward and the eastern parts of PEI as this system pushes in from the southwest. Now, right now, we're still seeing a lot of rain starting to form once again through Halifax, Truro, on up through northern Nova Scotia up towards Amherst. Scattered showers across PEI right now. Canso, we've got some heavy rains in the area, but we are talking about range. The temperatures are well above the freezing point, and that's going to be changing over the next 24 hours as well. We were talking about these rainfall warnings. They're all shifted eastward. Rainfall warnings still in effect, say from Canso on up towards Sydney and Inverness. We're talking about anywhere from 50 to 100 millimeters of rain over the next 24 hours with wind gusts up to 80 kilometers per hour. Not as windy as what we saw last night, but still, that's pretty windy, especially when we're talking about that rain. Now look at this. Temperatures still staying very mild. It's 9 degrees in Halifax, 10 in Truro. We've got 10 in Charlottetown. A little bit cooler in Sydney at 6, as well as Fredericton and St. John at 5, 6 in Edmundston. And I want to show you once again the national map, because look at this cold pocket of air stretching all the way from Ontario down into the deep south. In fact, in Nashville, Tennessee right now, it is minus 3 degrees. Meanwhile, here in Halifax, it is 9. In Orlando, it's 8. So today, still warmer here than it is in Florida, in most areas of Florida anyway. But take a look another again of this radar satellite composite. We've got this area of low pressure that's pushing its way through the Maritimes, and I don't know if you can make this out. It's just to the south and west of Nova Scotia. You see the clouds traveling in a counterclockwise rotation. Well, this is our area of low pressure for tonight. And again, as it pushes through, we're going to be seeing widespread rain, especially from central parts of Nova Scotia on eastward. Overnight tonight, we're talking about temperatures dropping in most areas, but look at this. Across western New Brunswick, the temperatures are going to drop below the freezing point. So what little is out there, and there will be some out there, we're talking about in the form of snow showers. So across western parts of New Brunswick tonight, maybe 5 centimeters of snow, and then again another 5 centimeters of snow by tomorrow. Warmer temperatures the further east we go, although across parts of PEI, the temperatures will be falling falling during the daytime hours. We'll start off near the double digits, wind up at around 5 tomorrow afternoon, and we're talking about anywhere from about 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, 30 to 40 millimeters of rain across Cape Breton tomorrow, so watch out for that. And again, the winds gusting up to 80 kilometers per hour in some areas. Along the southern shores of Nova Scotia, temperatures starting to cool off. The cool air is starting to make its way in. And you'll see that in the 7-day outlook. Take a look. Temperatures really falling, especially across New Brunswick, leading us into the weekend. It's not until next week that we get out of the freezer. For Nova Scotia, perhaps not as cold here, but certainly we're going to notice a dramatic change in temperature, especially on our Thursday. And then Friday, we're not making it above the freezing point, and falling temperatures across PEI. A rain-snow mix in the forecast for Thursday.
All right, Tina, thanks very much.
Okay.
A lot of weather, and you've been doing a great job. You and Cindy both forecasting this one. Thank you.
Okay.
Tina Simkin back before we're through here at 7 o'clock. Here in the second half of the program, we're going back to the Annapolis Valley to check in with the EMO Minister, Ramona Jennings. But first, back to St. Stephen to talk to the town manager about the cleanup after a storm like they've never seen before.
Diverse is watching CTV.
Well, as you've heard and seen, people in St. Stephen say they've never seen anything like it. You've seen the pictures of the gas station submerged in water. The flooding happened very quickly, and most of the floodwaters, we're told now, have receded. The town manager of St. Stephen, New Brunswick, John Ferguson, is joining us tonight. John, how do you assess the situation there in the town tonight after, 24 hours to deal with this?
Well, the first thing that we wanted to do was to make sure that our roads were passable, so our assessments following the receding water was to have engineers take a look at the roads that had a bit of compromise, and most of those roads are open except for one tonight.
And how much damage, in fact, have the floodwaters left behind in the light of day?
The commercial damage is significant. The entire mall, the Charlotte County Mall, has experienced serious water damage throughout.
What about the town infrastructure, which would obviously be your principal concern, I would think?
Well, that's right. Our Milltown Boulevard at the intersection of Queensway had a compromised road about 1/3 of the way across, and the water last night was rushing over that for several hours in mass quantities, and we were concerned about that road's integrity. It turns out that it's okay today, but we think that we're going to have to upgrade our infrastructure to deal with water like this in the future.
John, give us some sense of just how quickly this happened.
The rain started at around 11 o'clock yesterday morning, at times heavy. We decided to take a drive about the community to see what it was doing. At around 1:30, 2 o'clock, we could see that the water was rising quite heavy in the King Street area by the mall. We left that site, went and checked another part of town. At around 3:30, we got together, formed a small committee by the town to deal with how much rain had fallen and how much the water started to rise. We went back to the Charlotte Mall area, found out the water had risen by about 5 feet within a half an hour.
Wow.
We became very concerned after that, and not long after that we initiated our local emergency response.
Ever seen anything like this before?
No, I've only been here a year and a half in this community, and when we were viewing the sites in town, I asked a few people that were there, residents, lifelong residents. They said they've never seen water like this before, and this was yesterday at 4 o'clock. By 11 o'clock last night, the water level had actually doubled.
We appreciate your time tonight. We wish you well as you deal with it. John Ferguson, manager, town of St. Stephen, New Brunswick, joining us tonight live from the border town. We're going to take a short break. Coming next, Nova Scotia's Minister of EMO in her own backyard with yet another emergency to deal with. Ramona Jennings finds herself dealing with yet another emergency tonight, this one in her own backyard. Ms. Jennings is Nova Scotia's Minister of Emergency Management. She's also a member of the legislature for the Annapolis Valley, which, as you've seen, has been very hard hit in this windstorm. And the Minister is joining us now live from Windsor. Minister, good evening. What do you make of the damage that you're seeing there right behind you in Windsor at that seniors home and further down the valley?
Well, this is really unbelievable. I've just traveled around the valley floor this afternoon and this evening, and the damage is significant right along the whole valley. The trees are uprooted. I'm seeing a lot of damage to certain structures, especially new structures, and what's happened behind me is absolutely unbelievable. We're so lucky that the residents were able to be evacuated safely, and that the staff there did a fantastic job.
Minister, we have been told, and this is not confirmed, perhaps you can enlighten us, we were told that the building behind you may have been inspected as recently as a couple of months ago. Do you know anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that.
Right.
I haven't been speaking with the owners.
All right. What is your sense, having toured the valley this afternoon, of just how widespread the damage is there?
Well, I came along the highway and then went along the valley floor, and it is unbelievable. It's how widespread it is. The amount of trees that are down is significant. A lot of people have damage on their homes with their shingles that have been ripped off, and as I said earlier, any new construction, I'm seeing that they've collapsed.
Would it be your sense that there is possibly a claim for federal disaster relief here?
Well, what I'm seeing right now, it does look like a lot of what I saw today was insurable damage, but that we'd have to see at the end of the next couple of days, we'd have to be looking to see what kind of damage and getting all of our reports in from the municipalities just to assess what has happened.
Minister, you've held this portfolio for only 18 months, but by my count, this is the fourth or perhaps the fifth major emergency you've had to deal with. Is this an anomaly, do you think, or perhaps a sign that weather, and particularly dramatically bad weather, storms are changing as part of climate change or something else?
I do think that we're looking at more storms. I think that we're looking at some sort of significance around climate change. Weather patterns are changing, and that just reminds us that we need to be very aware of our weather systems and listen to the news, and to make sure that our families are prepared for any kind of weather system. I mean, I would have thought the next thing that we would have been dealing with was a blizzard, and here we are with this tropical event that has really caused significant damage to the valley.
Minister, we greatly appreciate your time tonight. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Nova Scotia's Minister of Emergency Management, the Honourable Ramona Jennings, live tonight from Windsor, right in the heart of her own backyard there. Health and medical news, a couple of minutes away in the Lifeline. Meteorologist Tina Simpkin returns with the final word on the weather for Work and School Wednesday morning next here on CTV News at 6. Meteorologist Cindy Day is off on assignment. Tina Simpkin is in the CTV Weather Center with the latest on the storm and what to plan for the morning.
Yeah, that's right. We're tracking another area of low pressure as if we needed another one, but it's coming in whether we like it or not. It's going to bring rain to most of the Maritimes with the exception of New Brunswick, where we are talking about snow tonight and into the early morning hours tomorrow morning, especially after midnight once the temperatures start falling below the freezing point across western New Brunswick. Otherwise, most of the temperatures are going to be well above the freezing point. Take a look at the wake-up forecast with the exception of Cape Breton. Across Cape Breton, we are talking about periods of heavy rain. Another 30 to 40 millimeters of rain is expected tonight. Another 30 to 40 millimeters of rain is expected tomorrow. For New Brunswick, it's snow. We are talking about anywhere from about 5 centimeters falling tonight, another 5 to 10 centimeters falling across western parts of New Brunswick tomorrow. It's going to be cold in western parts of New Brunswick, 5 across Nova Scotia, 7 for PEI. But some of us, like yesterday, will see a few peaks of sunshine here and there, but the temperatures falling across New Brunswick throughout the day as well as PEI.
Thank you, Tina. Something interesting for last tonight. Call this the Battle of the Bulbs, being waged east of Toronto. 2 households there trying to win the title of Best Christmas Lights. More than 100,000 lights on display at the Williams House in Pickering, Ontario. Their competition 2 doors down, the Wright family. They also have the holiday spirit. They've been working on their house since October. They have spent more than 200 hours decking it out. You almost expect a Chevy Chase to walk through that scene. All right, E-Talk is next here, CTV. 7:30, The Big Bang Theory, and our movie at 8 o'clock is Shrek. Flashpoint follows at 10 o'clock, and then our national newscast anchored by Lloyd Robertson tonight. Lloyd.
Tonight, more on the rescue operation for storm-stranded motorists in Ontario, and we'll find out how long the storm will last and where it's heading. Also, is there still life ahead for the Canadian penny? Later on CTV National News.
Thank you, Lloyd, and that will do it for the local news for tonight. So now for my colleagues on both sides of our cameras, I'm Steve Murphy. Thank you for making this your home for news. We will see you here again tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Have a good evening and be well.
CTV News, the Maritimes' #1 newscast.